And then he said, Hudayfa asked the Prophet ﷺ, will there good come after that evil? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, but it will have smoke in it, meaning that it's not pure. Just like if you come to a room which is steamy, or a room which has much smoke, it's no longer pure, you can't see. And the Prophet ﷺ described why it will be that. He said there are people who will not follow his guidance. You will recognize matters of theirs to be true, and you'll also recognize matters of theirs to be evil. And then Hudayfa said, will there be evil after that good? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes. The Prophet ﷺ said, there will be people calling to the gates of the hellfire. Whoever responds to them, he will throw them into the hellfire. Hudayfa asked the Prophet ﷺ, describe them to us. Describe them to me. The Prophet ﷺ says, they are from our complexion, meaning they're from us. And they speak our language. And then Hudayfa asked the Prophet ﷺ, advise me what to do. The Prophet ﷺ tells him, stick to the Imam of the Muslims and the Jama'ah. Stick to the Imam of the Muslims and the Jama'ah. And then Hudayfa says, what if there is no Imam and no Jama'ah? The Prophet ﷺ said, leave all the groups. Leave all the groups. And this is like our time now. When we find many different groups calling people to something which is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. To respond to them is to throw oneself in the hellfire. And likewise, the Prophet ﷺ also, besides informing us of the tribulations that will occur before the Day of Judgment, tells us about the change from good into evil. He gives us different descriptions. For instance, he tells us that among the signs of the hour, and as in the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, that if trusts are lost, the Prophet ﷺ says, when trusts are lost, then await the hour. So the companion asked the Messenger of Allah, how will the trust be lost? The Prophet ﷺ said, if the matter of being in charge is given to those who don't deserve it, then wait the hour, the approach of the hour. And now we see that in our lives. How many things in our lives do we find people who are unqualified, yet are in charge of the affairs of the Ummah? From countries, to groups, to societies, to different projects, and so forth. Many unqualified people. And this is a sign of the coming of the hour. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that among the signs of the hour is that knowledge will be removed from the people, and ignorance will become apparent. And that's also something that you see. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that knowledge will not be removed because Allah takes it away from people, but because scholars will die. Because scholars will die. And so when there's no more scholars left, people will take ignorant people as their leaders, who to follow. These ignorant people are themselves astray and will set others astray. And this is something we have seen. One of the shocking things of this year and the last year before that, how many scholars have died. This is one of the shocking things, and so much so that when I was in Mecca just a few weeks ago, I found the people, the brothers in Mecca calling this year the year of the death of the scholars. This is something which should make a Muslim, when he hears this, shiver, because truly, one can see how we had very few scholars before. And now with the death of so many of them in a very short period of time, who will lead the people? Ignorant people? Astray people? This is, when one fears this is an application or the realization of this statement of the Prophet ﷺ. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that among the signs of the hour is that riba, usury, will become widespread. Zina, illicit sex, will become widespread. That marketplaces will draw close together. This is something we also see. The drawing of marketplaces in the sense that prices are the same. You go to one market in London, you find the same item in Washington, you find the same item in Singapore for almost the same price. The markets have approached. And likewise, that the marketplaces are easily accessible. People now go to cities like Dubai and Jeddah and so forth from around the world to shop. This is the drawing closer of the marketplaces. While before, in a previous generation, you would only buy from your market. You would take you days and months maybe to travel to another area to get some goods. Likewise, among the signs the Prophet ﷺ tells us of is that there will be great stinginess before the hour. In a hadith we find in Tabarani, the Prophet ﷺ said, from the signs of the hour is that stinginess will appear. that there will be much trade and commerce, that money will be very prevalent, and that people will want to engage into trade and commerce so much that a woman will participate with her husband in order to make money. And this is something we see today, where many men and their wives go out and work, even though there's no need in the household for that, but it's only because of love of money. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that before the hour, there will be many earthquakes, that there will also occur sinking, in the sense the earth will open up and swallow people, that there will be transfigurations, human beings will be transfigured into other creatures, that there will be pelting from the skies above. These are another signs that the Prophet ﷺ tells us of. He likewise tells us that among the signs of the hour is that writing will become widespread. The Prophet ﷺ says from the signs of the hour in a hadith in Ahmed will be the appearance or the prominence of the pen, which refers to much writing. And that's what we find now. There are so many books printed, so many magazines, and most of it is of little value. Most of it is of little value. But yet, the earth seems filled with it. Likewise, from the signs of the hour, the Prophet ﷺ tells us is that people will have disregard for the voluntary acts of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ tells us in a hadith in Ibn Khuzaymah that a man will walk into a masjid and he will not even sit down and pray in their 2 rak'ahs. The masajid will be taken just as shortcuts to go from one place to another place. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ tells us from the signs of the hour is that there will be many women and few men. In a hadith in Bukhari, we find that 50 women will only have one man to support them. And that there will be much killing and so forth. So these are all different signs of the hour which have appeared and are growing and so forth. But what I'd like to do in the remaining time that I have left is to discuss some of these main signs of the hour. And the reason why is because it is these main signs of the hour which the Christians in particular talk about, the return of Jesus and so forth. So it's important for us as Muslims to have a knowledge regarding this, so when we hear them talking, especially now with the millennium approaching just a few months, and then they're expecting the return of Isa, that we understand these issues. So, before we discuss the issue of the return of Isa, alayhi salam, the first thing we should talk about is the appearance of someone called the Mahdi. And the Prophet ﷺ has told us in many hadith, these hadith in meaning reaching tawatur, meaning that there are so many that it is without doubt the Prophet ﷺ informed of it, that before the Day of Judgment, as mentioned in the hadith in Musnad of Imam Ahmed, an individual will appear whose name will be the same like the Prophet's name, and his father's name will be the same as the Prophet's father's name. So in other words, his name will be Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us in a hadith in Abu Dawood that this person is from the descendants of Fatima. And indeed, the Prophet ﷺ even tells us his physical characteristics. He tells us that he will have a receding foreline, and that his nose will be thin and will be crooked and coming to a point. And likewise, that the Prophet ﷺ informs us how he will appear. That he will come in a time when there will be much injustice, much tyranny on earth. And there will be many earthquakes. And there will be little rain. And also the Prophet ﷺ tells us that he will appear during a time of civil war and commotion between the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ said 3 sons of a Khalifa will fight at the death of a Khalifa. So there will be a Khalifa, a ruler of the Muslims who will die, and 3 of his sons will then fight. And so there will be civil war and turmoil between the Muslims. And so this young man, whose name is Muhammad ibn Abdullah, will come from Medina, fleeing this turmoil, and come to Mecca. When he arrives in Mecca,